Firstly, I suppose in terms of the climate discussion and the announcement and the launch of the Green Deal by the Commission President, or new Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, despite the fact that there was a lack of conclusion in the negotiations on the COP25, I think what was extremely positive and showed significant steps in the right direction was the launch of the Green Deal last week, but also the endorsement by the European Council of the objectives of the climate neutrality by 2050. Yes, there was obviously lengthy discussion and a lengthy debate among member states, and there are some still, in particular one, as you've mentioned, Poland, that has concerns not just or not specifically around the overall EU objective of reaching climate neutrality by 2050, but of their ability to be able to reach that. So they did not prevent the EU as a whole and the Council of approving this overall objective, and Ireland, of course, signed up fully to that. In terms of what does this mean, what's the timeline, what are we looking for Ireland specifically, I suppose we have a new Commission that has just been, a new College of Commissioners that have just been implemented. Obviously, we need to give them time to be able to set out what their goals and their objectives are. We know that there is a significant amount of funding being put behind this, as many have mentioned already, €100 billion specifically from the Commission's proposal, but also as part of that, the EBI supported €1 trillion Sustainable Europe Investment Plan. This is Commission's plan. The Commission is expected to publish its Sustainable Europe Investment Plan in early January 2020. That's obviously given the Commission time to put that plan in place. And of course, when we get that, individual countries, as our own Department of Finance, will have to examine those specific proposals accordingly. In terms of the €100 billion Just Transition Fund, we have over and over and again last week mentioned and raised the issue of our own need for access to this fund, in particular around the Midlands and in particular on the issue of peat. I don't think it's fair to say that hundreds of jobs are being allowed, as Deputy McGrath has mentioned, that jobs are just being let go and that there's no opportunity here. I think the tone of the discussion last week, in particular by the new Commission President, was a very positive tone that yes, there will be change, yes, there will be challenges, but this is an opportunity, I think, to transition, to look at new technologies, to create new kind of jobs. We know that the vast majority of our younger people and our younger generations now will be working in jobs that haven't even been created yet. So this fund from the EIB, but also the Just Transition Fund, will allow us to look at these new type of mechanisms, and Deputy Helen asked how are we going to do that. One of the things that happened at the Council last week was that Taoiseach met with the Prime Minister of Denmark and Sweden, and I suppose they signed their own agreement to look at how we can work with each other, how we can cooperate, how we can share information and insights as to how we can actually develop these technologies, not just working with private sector but also with the public sector as well, where there will need to be investment in both areas. So in terms of the Just Transition mechanism, peat was raised, and it is certainly not just an issue for us. Our colleagues in Finland also see this as a concern and an issue for them, and it's something that we will continue to raise, and once there is further detail as to how we can access that, obviously we will let deputies know. In terms of the MFF discussions and the negotiations, this was obviously quite a short discussion at the European Council, but it was discussed in great detail at the General Affairs Council, which I attended earlier on in the week, and there have been quite lengthy discussions. This is the first time that the General Affairs Council met with new figures put in place, the new negotiating box with the figures by the Finnish presidency. I think as a whole, Ireland was probably somewhat more satisfied with the proposal than most member states, in saying that there are still some significant areas of concern for us. The first and main one being that the CAP proposals still see a reduction. While there was a proposal to increase the Pillar 2 payments by 10 billion, there was still a cut to Pillar 1. So this is something that we have consistently said, if we are going to pay more, and we are willing to pay more as a country, not just naturally, which will happen because of the fact we're going to be net contributors for the full term, but we have said we could pay above and beyond that. Not, however, if the more traditional priorities as we see them are being cut, and that includes CAP, cohesion, horizon and other traditional areas like that. In terms of the €1 billion fund, this is something that I personally engaged with my Finnish counterpart on. There was this proposal for 60 million per year to be put forward by the European Council, which would then see matched funding by the Irish and UK governments, which would over time, over the lifetime of the 7-year budget, amount to maybe just under 700 million. But what we were able to achieve through discussions was an increase to 100 million of a contribution from the European Commission, which would then again see match funding from the Irish and the UK government, which would bring it to almost £1 billion over the lifetime of this specific fund. So I would be confident that funding will remain in place as is proposed, and obviously, as you've mentioned, Deputy, in the context of Brexit, and given the significant impact that the Peace Plus Fund has already had, Peace Plus 2 or the next phase of it will be equally as important, given what's just happened with Brexit, but given the fact that we still have a huge amount of work to do in terms of reconciliation and bringing communities together. There are other areas which we support in terms of the 25% of the overall budget being allocated to climate change, around the rule of law mechanism, around own resources, where we're looking at plastic, which obviously is a self-depreciating fund, but something that we are willing to look at. In terms of the conference, I suppose this is something that has stemmed out of the Future of Europe debate, which yourself and many deputies here have taken part in at an Irish level, but which has taken part in these conversations at a European level. Our own conversation and our own priorities as a government fed into the new strategic agenda, which the Commission and the new College of Commissioners are now set with implementing. From my own point of view, the way I would see this being implemented, or would like to see it, is that we can continue that people-to-people contact, that we focus mainly on implementing the strategic agenda as it's been laid out, but also that we do look at other areas. And what's happening now is that the Croatian presidency, which is coming in next now in January, has been asked to work towards defining a position with all of the member states, looking at the content, the scope, the composition and the functioning of such a conference, and obviously we would hope to play our part and make contributions to how that will look. And this is, I think most importantly, this is going to happen not just from a council point of view, but working with the European Parliament and the Commission, and most importantly making sure that everything that we do feeds back to the citizens, because this should all be about engaging with people and making sure that the work that we're doing is based on the work that they want us to do and engage in. Thank you.
9.5 minutes left. I want to get